Tag TV and Tag Radio. Be seen and heard by both technology users and technology producers throughout the state of Georgia and around the world. Low cost, big benefits, powerhouse online branded video and audio has arrived. Tag TV, Tag Radio, there's a lot more to know. This edition of Tech Talk is brought to you by GlobalSpeak.com, new media consultants, corporate video and audio communications, video and audio production and distribution, live and virtual event production. Tag TV and Tag Radio is a service of GlobalSpeak.com, creatively delivering powerful marketing, video, and audio solutions. The enterprise of tomorrow may mirror the entertainment industry today. That's right. Collaboration efforts in the entertainment industry are now enabled by a broad range of technological tools and applications that empower groups of people to work together as never before. The empowered technological potential made possible by today's digital interconnected reality has resulted in disruptive technologies that have already begun to radically impact multiple vertical entertainment industry sectors. The communications convergence, the content development, the content management, workflow control, distribution, and monetization for the production of film, music, broadcast, or gaming. Greetings, everyone. It's Tuesday, October 10th, 2011, and this is a unique, most fascinating edition of Tech Talk with Technology Association of Georgia President Tino Mandela. I'm your guest host, Frank Baia. A native of New York, Stephen Marsh came west at 19 and since has been fortunate enough to count Grammy nominees and winners, multiple gold and platinum albums, and numerous chart successes among the thousands of releases to his prior credit. Stephen's career mastering successful albums with a genre-diverse cross-section of artists includes work with Los Lobos, Boyz II Men, Ben Harper, Megadeth, Kenny Loggins, Jars of Clay, and on and on and on. In 2004, Grammy winner Keep It Simple. His soundtrack credits include Bored to Death, Sex and the City films, The Elf, The Notebook, The Hangover, Friday the 13th, A Nightmare on Elm Street, and the Golden Globe-nominated score for Sideways with composer Rolf Kent. The Tech Talk turns to Los Angeles as we meet Stephen Marsh, owner of Marsh Mastering, as we talk about the music industry, his corporate experience, the challenges of how businesses of today are facing the economy of tomorrow with the same technological challenges and opportunities as the entertainment industry. It's all about digitainment and about music and the convergence of technology and entertainment as we speak with Stephen Marsh, owner, Marsh Mastering. Stephen, welcome to Tech Talk.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
Well, one of the things that they talk about as far as the entertainment industry is concerned, there's a lot of conversation now about the blending of entertainment and social media. I know there's even talk about talent as a brand, literally where the individual can market their music and deal directly with the consumer instead of dealing with the record albums and those kind of things. I don't want to go there yet, but what I wanted to talk about is you came from a corporate existence and went into the music industry or into the business. Tell us a little bit about how you found yourself in the music business and how you ended up in Los Angeles.
Well, I sort of like a lot of people from the East Coast who wind up on the West Coast, I guess. I wound up in it purely by accident. I was working at Taco Bell in upstate New York as an assistant night manager. And a friend came in and said he was moving to California in 2 weeks, and I said, okay, I'm going, because clearly there were better job prospects than that. So I won't explain how I wound up working at a Taco Bell. But when I came out to LA, I found that it was during a time when the industry was just cranking, especially the corporate record industry. The labels were the dominant masters of the universe out here, mm-hmm. and because they were so big and moving forward, there was a lot of ways to get in. There was a lot of different opportunities that presented themselves, and a lot of different people were having a lot of mobility within the industry. So there were openings constantly. So I was able to slip in with Sony, and I spent a few years with them, and I got to learn what worked about corporate record label, and I got to learn what didn't work about corporate label. And in my view, obviously my view is a technological one, because what I deal with is taking creativity and making a physical product out of it. And a lot of what our business does is use technology to create that transition. And what I've seen transpire through the last 16 or 17 years since I started doing this is the move has gone from the tools of making that transition have been sort of moved away from the corporate side and more put directly into the hands of the creative people. And as they do that, that means the creatives are interfacing directly with their talent, or with their client base, being customers. And there's even more technology required to make sure that transition happens because there aren't as many people involved in the process to sort of handhold or docent the material through. Obviously, when something gets created, it's done so in the way that it's done. It happens. It just is. Creative people cannot be tied down or thought of like accountants or anybody else. It's sort of accountable to reason in a lot of instances. Artists are traditionally pretty weird in a good way, and that's what makes them tick and makes them do what they do. So one of the things that I've seen really dramatically change has been what artists are using to communicate with people and how they're communicating. As you mentioned very, very astutely, branding is where it's at right now. Every artist really is a brand, and they need to understand that it's not simply about singing a song, making a recording of it, and selling that. It's about taking your brand and translating that to different media, whether that is on the web or that's on television, that's in film, that's through music, that's through art, through poetry. I recently did a project with a company that's headed up by an actor named Joe Gordon-Levitt. He's in that new movie 50/50 that's coming out, and or maybe it may be out this week. I'm not sure. But Joe has an organization called hitrecord.org, and his whole philosophy is a collaborative means of artists sort of getting together in the digital age, in the digital workspace, and creating a virtual online studio where different people of different stripes can interact across media, where you have one project that can spring itself into a song, into a short story, into a poem, into a film, into a TV show, into a book, all from one idea. And by bringing different people's talents to bear on that idea or on that concept, you can expand its potential.
Well, I think that's kind of interesting, Stefan. There's a couple of things I might inject. First off is that I think of entertainment as sort of the bleeding edge of the convergence that's happening because of the digital capabilities of computers and cloud connecting that allows for the kind of collaboration and virtual collaboration that was not possible before, and even source to consumption. So you're not only talking about the collaboration from the early stages of the development of the creative, you're talking all the way through to the actual distribution and even the relationship with the customer that was never capable before. And the thing about it, is that that's actually happening in the private sector as well. So what you're talking about is a forerunner of what is happening between art and science, if you will, as far as even the what used to be, say, the marketing side or the creative side of business marketing with the IT side. And so in many cases, the CTO or the CIO of a corporation, a private sector technology company, is as much involved in the creative process anymore as they are in the technology process. Now, I might say I know that in the introduction we mentioned some of this, but Stefan has among his awards and accolades, Grammy nominations and winners, and multiple gold and platinum albums and numerous chart successes. So what you're talking about is kind of a proof of concept. It isn't just the fact that you went out there on a kind of a risk-taking journey and ended up getting involved in an opportunity to educate yourself. You saw the transitional period, and we're part of that transition that takes us kind of where we are, today as far as the music industry is concerned. The second part of what I was going to say is that we had spoke earlier just in our opening discussion, you and I, about digitainment and the fact that many of us here in Georgia feel that same convergence that you're talking about. Not only is it happening vertically to a sector like music or film, but it's happening horizontally across music, film, broadcast, and gaming. And it's all kind of becoming this huge creative sandbox, if you will, that allows for the individual or the individual talent to put an entry, almost like an entrepreneurial type thing, and become a brand, become a business within themselves. Well,
and it lays the onus on the people that are able to properly corral those different elements. People that can understand the best ways to integrate both vertically and horizontally are going to be able to leverage so much more, not only talent or creative content, but also access to marketplace.
And again, you're talking about new edge type talents and some of the old guard, Kenny Loggins, Lobos, Boys to Men, and still dealing with, because I think also probably one of the challenges that a lot of us have is, there was, the famous, the medium is the message kind of a thing, and now media is everything. I mean, Facebook is a media, and, so when you used to be able to deal with, say, for example, in your particular field, a studio that had a record label that basically controlled a lot of that functionality. Now it's a case where I guess, my question to you is, is it sort of like when we do some video production, sometimes it really isn't a group of employees, it's a group of individual talent that work together as a team, and we'll bring that team together to produce a film or to produce a particular, like a football game. And so they'll bring a fellow in from Seattle or a fellow in from Miami that are used to doing it. Is it something like that? Do you see that kind of collaboration where you have your particular seat at the table along with others? I mean, who drives the actual process? The talent? When you don't have that management system in place, where does the concept begin with?
I think, it goes back to what you were discussing before about how the arts tend to be on the bleeding edge. And I think one of the primary factors that causes that is artists are always looking, they don't create out of desire, they create out of compulsion. They're driven to do it. They have to. That's one of the reasons I have infinite job security. I know that people that create music will always be compelled to create music, and will always need somebody to help them tell their story, which is sort of how I view my role in the process. But I think because they're always trying to push the edge, they're always looking for different ways to market their brand or to create a new brand. I mean, Lady Gaga being absolutely a number one example of what you can do when you take yourself and view yourself in a 360 fashion as a brand, vertically, horizontally, across all genre and across all industry. You find that she has a marketability in so many venues that a lot of people, they don't advantage themselves of those because they're not thinking that way. They're not thinking how everything relates and feeds back onto itself. Sort of the same way that social media works. It makes sense that social media fits our society today. It's the way it goes right along with the way that we interact with each other in traditional life and the way that people organize things. But I think as we see the shift, take place from sort of more business-centric to more sort of artist-centric, the artists are definitely driving the boat, as you say.
Mm-hmm.
And they're pushing that envelope, and they're creating new opportunities and new things are evolving. When I came into the business, one of the things that I struggled with was understanding how the formats worked. I didn't understand why, it's like, well, if CD is the best format, then why do we have CD and vinyl and cassette and 8-track? And then 8-track goes away, and then cassette goes away, and then vinyl goes away, and then vinyl comes back, and then CD goes away, and then CD comes back, and then downloads happen. And one thing I never sort of understood, and I think one of the big things our industry tried to figure out was like, our industry has been so geared around the next big thing, whether it was, cassette replacing 8-track or vinyl or CD replacing vinyl or downloads replacing CD. We always waited for the next big thing, and iTunes kind of became that in a certain sense. iTunes kind of became the next big thing where we could put a lot of resources behind this one thing and drive it and make it the standard. But then there's all these other competing services. And what we found out is that we did, where the industry was sort of set up to have a really narrow and really deep penetration in terms of the format. We wanted to sell one very specific format or two very specific formats to everybody. Instead, we have a myriad of formats, and we're selling a few to each person. So you're going to have people that are going to buy the vinyl. You're going to have people that are going to buy the CD or buy the download or buy a stream or buy a subscription to a service that allows them to get a stream or a download. You're going to have people consuming these variables in different ways, and as they consume all this content, you wind up creating a market that is exactly the opposite of the market that the industry was really set up to monetize.
Well, in the technology industry, they call it disruptive, and really that's what you're saying. It isn't an evolution, not even an innovation from the existing industry. It's totally disruptive and a whole new game and a whole new way of doing things. And I really do understand when you talk about, you mentioned narrow and deep. I think a lot of companies have been created that way. They started out with a core competency, and they understood their process and understood the source to consumption and stayed pretty narrow and mined that market to as deep as they possibly could get to it. Now it's a case where even those organizations are having to open up to whole new avenues of distribution, whole new concepts of how to leverage their core competency to be able to compete in what obviously is almost a cliche anymore when we talk about a global economy. I think it's not even a clear definition of it anymore, because we're talking about a virtual economy that has no borders. If you say a global economy, there's still the idea that you have, the European Union, or you have Mercosur or something like that, or NAFTA, and part of what's going on in North America, when the reality of it is it's a form of, and I think I would call it demassification, because you're not only talking about the formats, you're talking about the genre, and it's up to the individual consumer. It's almost like they say with education, it's how the student wants to learn. Well, in this case, it's how the consumer wants to get that particular entertainment. And so
that's inherently less controllable, which is, I think, one of the reasons that we've seen such a dramatic pushback, and why it's taken so many years to sort of find. And our business is definitely sort of finding its level now, in terms of how we sell products to the market the way that they want them to be sold to them.
That's really the next question. I was really heading in that direction, and that is, when it's chaos and you're operating in a sense in an environment, and it's almost literally like a video game. I mean, you think of World of Warcraft or something insane, because of it changing and being dynamic, and everything is different almost every day. But you are seeing somewhat of a leveling out now, where things are at least stabilizing for the moment, and you got a grip on the chaos, I guess.
Yeah, well, it's we seem to have, and I say this with all measure of reservation, probably that I should say it with, but we seem to have found the bottom for CD sales, and not that I think that CD is going to bounce back and continue to be a viable format in perpetuity, but for the near term, we're finding out what consumers want and how they want to be sold, but we're also finding out what consumers will pay for and what they won't. And one thing that we seem to keep finding is that sort of the true music fans will still buy CDs. In fact, they prefer it because there's something inherent with having a physical product in your hand. I always equate it to being a kid and throwing on a vinyl and sitting down next to the speaker and reading through the credits and looking at the artwork, and it was more interaction with the music than you just got from listening to a download or something that you do today.
Well, it's my understanding vinyl is actually coming back in that same regard. That a lot of the young people, the ex-native digital natives that were so iTunic, if you will, are now enjoying the richness of the sound of vinyl.
Yeah, it's true. But I try not to trumpet that as much, because if you look into the numbers behind it, vinyl sales have increased but they've increased basically from almost nothing to nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to talk unit sales, we moved about 360 million units last year in terms of CD and digital downloads, and we moved about 3 million units, or 2.8 million units of vinyl. Mm-hmm. So it's essentially about a 1% relationship, about 1%.
It's a novelty. It's not extinct, but it's certainly not dominating. Yeah. You know what would be a good thing? We probably should have done this earlier, and that is Marsh mastering. Go into a little bit about what role your company actually does play in the process that we're talking about.
Well, what we do is we're sort of the bridge between the creative and the commercial. We're the last creative step and the first technical step in sending musical product from content to manufacturing or to consumer. So we sit at that unique crossroads where the artists come and we're the last chance for them to sort of put their stamp and finalize any creative decisions. And in our case of music, we're talking sonic decisions, whether something's going to be like when you sit in your car and you put a little bass or a little treble on something. We sit with the artists who make all those final determinations so that whatever material is going to sit on a release together, whether it's going to be an album or an EP or a film or a soundtrack or whatever, and we do a lot of all those, it's going to be a cohesive listening experience. So the person isn't, you may put a CD on and you may put a little bit of bass on, but you're not going to be writing the bass up and down on each song and writing the treble up and down on each song and raising the volume and lowering the volume, those kind of things. Sort of eliminating any technical problems from the listening process, and also handling any technical issues that may be inherent in the material as prepared. Because material is creative people create haphazardly in a lot of instances. There can be some loose hairs or some weird things that are still left until the very end. We trim away that material, get it prepped for release, and also try to make sure that in a commercial sense that material is valid for sale in the genre that it's working in. If you had a classical album and you brought it into me and I added a bunch of distorted guitars on it, that would be a really big mistake, because very few people in the classical mindset would probably be willing to purchase that record. Whereas if you had a heavy metal record or something, you may take it in a different direction. So trying to determine exactly what's appropriate for each genre so that they fit, and so that when it's commercially released, it sits well with other material without stamping out the artist's original vision or what they were trying to do creatively. We want to make sure that it relates to the marketplace it's going to be presented.
Well, and what creative fun you have when you think of the diversity. I know some of your score credits, soundtrack score credits, they go from Bored to Death to Sex and the City and even Hangover and Friday the 13th. So I can imagine that the creative aspects of trying to understand what's right for that particular genre or that particular market or that particular creative process has got to be both exciting and challenging at the same time. Unfortunately, as always the good interviews do, they run fast and we run out of time. But a couple of just quick thoughts, because I'd like to hear your opinion while we've got you on the program, and that is Los Angeles, would you, and it's kind of tough to say this, I promise we won't let any of the program go into any of the city of Los Angeles, but where I was going is, can you say the same thing about, say, for example, the control that was once held by the studios and by the record albums has been kind of diversified by this disruptive technology? Would you say that certainly L.A. is still the capital without any question, Hollywood and all of the music industry and everything else that goes on out on the West Coast, but would you say it's kind of balancing out like cities like Atlanta and Memphis and Nashville and some of the places in the southeastern United States? Give us your opinion on the music industry in general. As far as do you see it kind of the same way the technology is going, sort of balancing out a little bit more equally than concentrated in one area?
Yeah, in terms of creativity, I think it absolutely is. There's a lot more parity from location to location around the country, and you can credit a lot of different things with that. You can credit how broad the scope of material that you can access through things like iTunes and whatnot. Your ability to listen and sample and experience music from far left to far right to behind your head and everywhere else in terms of like where it's coming from. You can pull in music from around the globe from your laptop, and everybody's doing it. It's not like there's a way to do it and a few people have got into it and they're early adopters. It's like everybody can do it from everywhere all the time now. So as that happens, I think you're finding the creative cream rising to the top in a lot of cities. Things like, I hate to admit it, but things like American Idol and things like X Factor and things like The Voice, television shows where they're going out and actively seeking talent and mining areas that are not mined by the big corporate record labels and haven't really been tapped into for almost 20 years, except for the rare exception where somebody gets signed out of Columbus, Ohio, and they get huge or something,
It's kind of funny because it's a paradox because a few minutes ago I was talking about a global economy and then being a virtual economy because you're really saying the same thing. Mm-hmm. It is talent is the brand, and what drives the industry now isn't necessarily a geographic location. It's the concentration of where the talent is, and that can be in India or someplace if it's capable on a global basis.
We're right back to the 60s in that sense. I mean, it used to be that they would sign specifically talent. They really didn't care what the person looked like or what their backing band sounded like or what songs they were singing because they understood. If you sign Aretha Franklin and she's hideously talented, you can change out the producers, the musicians, the studio, the songwriters. You can change out the wardrobe, the hairdo. You can change out anything else you want, as long as it's a kernel of talent to build it around. And now what you've got is artists are back in that position where if you have talent, except every means around the globe is available to you through the internet to access. So you're not just accessing the core small group of talent that you may find at a label. You're not just accessing the engineers that are available to that production company. You're accessing whatever engineer you need around the world, whatever producer you need around the world, whatever musician you need around the world. So the ability to swap parts out is so much more dynamic now than it used to be because you can get amazing results by sort of pooling resources from around the globe. And it's funny. Everything old is new again, and everything new is old again.
Well, not to get too philosophical, but I remember there's an old Chinese proverb that says, "May you live in interesting times," and they say that's both a blessing and a curse. And I think Stefan will leave it at that. Again, as I mentioned to you before, the good interviews always go too fast, and I'll tell you one thing. I'll be proud to offer an invitation to have you back again to discuss it even further because we've really, really learned a lot and enjoyed having an opportunity to speak with you. And thank you so much for taking time out of your hectic schedule to be with us today on Tech Talk.
Of course, it was a pleasure. I really hope the TAG audience was able to get something from that. And it was a pleasure to speak with you, and I'd be happy to chat with you again sometime.